In 2017, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were released, and Aipom became overpowered for a very mathematical reason. In the Little Cup format on Pokemon Showdown, Aipom was then banned for being too strong and overpowered. But the story of Aipom's greatness actually begins with Generation 5, when Aipom received a very special hidden ability called Skill Link. Skill Link is an ability that makes your multi-hit moves always hit the maximum number of times. In Generation 5, Aipom had two options for its main normal type attack. One is that it could use the move Return, a normal type move that depends on your happiness and becomes 102 base power at maximum happiness. Or it could use Fury Swipes, an 18 base power move that because of Skill Link always hits 5 times and becomes 90 base power. Why would you ever use Fury Swipes? Not only is it weaker, it's inaccurate too. But therein lies the game. Little Cup is a format where you use unevolved basic form Pokemon and you play at level 5. It's based on the original Little Cup from Pokemon Stadium. Because of the way damage calculations work at level 5, Fury Swipes is significantly better than Return. Yes, you heard that right. The weaker move is actually stronger. We can take a look at an example of Aipom versus Mianfu. Aipom's Fury Swipes will always do more damage than Aipom's Return. The reason is that multi-hit moves in Little Cup are overpowered. Here's why, and here's why it took Aipom until Generation 7 to unlock its true potential. There's actually a lot of Pokemon in Little Cup that uses multi-hit moves simply because they are better. Shelder is a pure water-type Pokemon that uses Shell Smash to try and sweep, but its main attack isn't a water move like Razor Shell. It's actually Icicle Spear. Despite not having a same type attack bonus, Icicle Spear is stronger because it's a multi-hit move. To understand why, we have to take a look at the damage formula. It may look complicated, but it's ultimately only addition, multiplication, and division. There's one main part of the formula that calculates damage, and then that gets multiplied by other modifiers like stab, super effective, critical hits, etc. Little Cup is played at level 5. Power refers to the base power of the move, and A divided by D refers to attack divided by defense. This is where the level 5 magic comes into play. Ordinarily, that simple +2 is negligible. At high levels, that +2 is nothing in comparison to the rest of the formula. But in Little Cup, that +2 becomes important. If attack equals defense, a 100 base power move would be 4 times 100 divided by 50 plus 2. That would be 10 HP damage before modifiers like stab. A 20 base power move would be 4 times 20 divided by 50 plus 2. Most damage calculation operations are integer calculations, and that effectively means that decimals truncate so that the numbers stay as an integer. So that actually becomes 1.6 plus 2, which is 1 plus 2, which is 3. That means a 20 base power move used 5 times is doing 3 times 5 damage for 15 damage total. Just by splitting the damage into 5 distinct parts, you increase your damage output tremendously. Instead of doing 10 damage, you're now doing 15. However, there is a complicating factor here, which is randomness. The game introduces randomness so that each attack doesn't always do the same amount of damage. It does that by creating 16 possible outcomes for your attack. One outcome is that your attack does exactly what it's supposed to. Another outcome is that your attack does 99% of what it's supposed to. One more outcome is that it does 98% of your damage, and so on and so forth. The lowest possible roll is 85% of your intended damage. At high levels, that ends up being a pretty even distribution. If you're meant to do 100 damage, your lowest roll is 85. But at level 5, that becomes incredibly awkward. If your attack is meant to do 3 damage, one possible outcome is that you do in fact do 3 damage. But every other outcome is that you get truncated all the way down to 2 damage. For example, if you're supposed to do 2.99 damage, that's actually 2 damage. You end up with 15 of the same damage output and then 1 high mega roll. But then you multiply the other modifiers too. A stab boost would multiply the power by 1.5 times and bring that damage back up to 3. Then on top of that, you have to consider the effect of Life Orb. Life Orb is a 1.3 times multiplier to raw damage. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, damage after Life Orb is not truncated, it is rounded. So a 3 HP damage attack becomes 3.9, which rounds up to 4. And just to recap if that got a little confusing, the end result is that under this framework, each Life Orb Fury Swipe will be doing 4 HP of damage. To put that in perspective, as long as it's not very effective, you should be doing 4 times 5, which is 20 HP of damage on every attack. Most level 5 Pokemon have a little more than 20 HP, so you're a literal one-hit KO machine. That is an incredible amount of damage. To add even more fuel to the fire, 5 hits means you have 5 chances to hit the 1/16 Mega Roll to increase your damage even further. However, there's also a little trap, and this trap is why Aipom was not immediately overpowered. There's one shackle which kept Aipom from being truly broken. Until now, we've been assuming that attack is the same as defense, but that's not true against a high defense Pokemon with Eviolite. When you fight extremely high defense Pokemon, sometimes you do very little damage. For example, versus a high defense Pokemon like Eviolite Spritzee, let's return to the original formula. Aipom's attack is 15 and Spritzee's defense is 24. Plug in all the values in the formula and you get a value that's less than 1. That truncates to 0. 0 plus 2 is 2, and that is your damage output versus a high defense Pokemon. Not 3, but 2. And now when you apply that randomness factor, most of the time you are now doing 1 damage. This is really bad. Now when you apply stab, 1 times 1.5 is 1.5, but that truncates to 1. And with Life Orb, 1 times 1.3 is 1.3, which rounds down to 1. Versus Spritzee, each Fury Swipe does 1 HP each for a terrible total of 5. Instead of outperforming Return, you are now worse off. When you use Aipom, you have to avoid that doomsday scenario. Aipom before Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon was an alright to good Pokemon. It could leverage multi-hit moves to inflict lots of damage to neutral targets. It had good all-around stats and its speed was elite. It had Knockoff to hit Ghost-type Pokemon and remove Eviolite, Fire Punch to hit Iron Barb's Pharaoh Seed, and plenty of other utility moves like Seed Bomb, Fake Out, and U-Turn. However, it did have to be careful versus high defense Pokemon. But everything changed in Generation 7 when Aipom got access to a new move, Tail Slap. Tail Slap is slightly better than Fury Swipes, but that damage increase happens to hit the exact breakpoint. With a base power of 25 instead of 18, Aipom perfectly hits the right spot to start scaling. Even versus high defense Pokemon, it's almost impossible for that term to become lesser than 1. You never enter that 1 damage trap anymore. The Spritzee that could nullify Fury Swipes before is back to taking 20 HP per attack. With that slight increase in power, Tail Slap removed the one limiter Aipom had, exploited the broken nature of multi-hit moves, and Aipom is now free to wreak havoc. You will die, no questions asked. Aipom has been banned for years now, and as long as it has Tail Slap, it will likely to be banned in every Little Cup in the future.